Martell Holt's story is one that proves that sometimes the very thing you chase can end up costing you everything that matters. Once upon a time, he had it all. A beautiful wife, a loving family, a successful business, and a reality TV platform that made him one of the most talked about men on Love and Marriage, Huntsville. Martell carried himself with pride, confidence, and charm. To the outside world, he seemed like the perfect husband and father, someone who had figured out how to balance love, success, and family life. But behind the scenes, there was a storm quietly building, and when it finally broke, it changed everything. What started as a picture-perfect life soon turned into one of reality television's most painful and public unravelings. After his split from Melody Shari, the world watched Martell struggle to find his footing again. It was like watching a man trying to rebuild a house on shaky ground. Pride became his biggest battle. He wanted to look like he was still in control, still the same confident man he once was, but deep down, he was losing himself more every day. In the middle of that chaos stood Arion Curry, the woman whose name would forever be tied to his downfall. At first, it seemed like just another secret affair, but over time, her presence became a storm of its own. Every time the public thought things were quieting down, something new would happen: a post, a live video, a rumor that would reignite the drama all over again. People couldn't look away because this wasn't just a love triangle. It was a lesson in what happens when ego and emotion collide. When Martell and Arion first got together, the chemistry was obvious. It was chaotic but magnetic. It made people stop scrolling, pause, and talk. But what looked exciting in the beginning quickly turned into something darker. The cracks started to show. Martell's once thriving business slowed down, his partnerships shifted, and that smooth, confident image began to fade. He tried to keep up appearances, but it was clear that things were no longer the same. Meanwhile, Arionne found herself under a kind of attention that few people could handle. Overnight, she went from being unknown to being one of the most criticized women on social media. Every word she said, every picture she posted, every emotion she showed was analyzed, mocked, or attacked. It's easy for people to judge, but the truth is, Arionne wasn't ready for that level of attention. She was thrown into a storm that she didn't fully understand. While she tried to defend herself, the more she spoke, the worse it seemed to get. Every time she went live or clapped back online, it only gave the internet more fuel. The drama fed itself, and soon both she and Martell became trapped in that endless cycle of back-and-forth chaos. Social media never forgets anything, and in their case, it made sure that every mistake was magnified. Through all of this, Melody Shari was quietly moving in a completely different direction. While her ex-husband was tangled in gossip and drama, she was building, thriving, and glowing. Melody became the picture of peace and progress. She showed what it looks like when someone takes pain and turns it into power. She didn't just talk about healing, she lived it. She focused on her career, her brand, her children, and her own happiness. Fans saw it, and they couldn't help but notice the difference. They started saying, "Mel moved on, but why can't Martell?" That question became louder every season because no matter how much Martell tried to show that he had things under control, his actions told a different story. He tried to present himself as the man who was unbothered, confident, and still in control, but the truth was written all over his face. Every time he spoke about Melody, his tone changed. Every time her name came up, you could feel that tension, that mix of pride, regret, and unresolved emotion. The calm image slipped whenever his pride was tested or his temper flared. It was like watching someone fight a shadow version of himself. A man who wanted to look strong but was clearly broken inside, and let's be honest, a lot of people could relate to that. We've all made choices that cost us something valuable. We've all held on to our pride longer than we should have. But what separates those who rise again from those who stay stuck is accountability. And that's where Martell keeps falling short. He had every opportunity to rebuild his life and his image. But instead of focusing on personal growth, he kept finding himself caught in the same web of drama. Every season, every interview, every live video felt like déjà vu, the same patterns, the same excuses, the same pain, just wearing a new outfit. Meanwhile, Arionne was struggling too. She was caught between trying to defend herself and realizing she might have lost herself in the process. You could see that she was tired, frustrated, and feeling misunderstood. But when emotions and pride keep leading the way, healing becomes impossible. Many fans have said that this whole story could have gone differently. If Martell had owned up to his mistakes early on, if he had truly apologized without excuses, maybe the world would have seen a different side of him. If Arion had stepped back instead of jumping into the public spotlight, maybe the narrative would have changed. But instead, both of them kept feeding into the noise. Every time they spoke, the wounds reopened, and the drama kept living on. For a lot of viewers, it became painful to watch. People who once rooted for Martell found themselves shaking their heads, saying, "Man, you had it all." And that's true. He really did. He had a wife who loved him, children who adored him, and a life that most people dream of. But ego doesn't care about blessings. Ego only cares about winning. And in chasing what he thought was freedom, Martell ended up losing his peace. Arionne's story is also complicated. She stood by him when everyone else turned away, but that loyalty came at a cost. She was never truly chosen. Fans could see it clearly. Martell might have spent time with her, he might have said things that made her feel special, but he never made her his priority. Even after his divorce, he didn't marry her. He didn't build a public life with her. He kept her close enough to use but far enough to keep her in the shadows. That's why people say Arion wasn't his forever, she was his escape. She was the outlet he ran to when he didn't want to face reality. Melody challenged him. Melody held him accountable. Melody had standards. Arion didn't. She accepted less because she thought one day it would turn into more. She believed that if she waited long enough, she would get the love story she imagined. But the truth is, she was part of a distraction away for Martell to avoid facing himself. And now, if we go back to Melody's side, that's where the light shines brightest. Melody didn't just survive the betrayal, she transformed because of it. She didn't let the pain define her. She used it as motivation. She became a living example of how you can lose everything and still come out stronger. She built her brand, started her music career, launched businesses, and kept showing up for her children. Every move she made screamed growth, confidence, and grace. She didn't have to tear anyone down or throw shade online. Her success spoke for itself. While Melody was glowing up, Martell was struggling to find his way back. He tried to paint himself as misunderstood. He gave interviews, went on podcasts, and spoke about how things were unfair. But fans weren't buying it. They saw the manipulation. They saw the pattern of blame and deflection. Instead of showing change through action, he kept trying to talk his way out of accountability. That only made things worse. Every time he mentioned Melody or Arion, the conversation turned negative, and then there was Arion, still online, still venting, still trying to prove that she mattered. But if she really mattered to Martell, why didn't he choose her? Why didn't he marry her after Melody? The answer is simple. Because deep down, he knew she wasn't the one. He knew that what he had with Melody could never be replaced. Melody was the real partner, the real match, the real foundation. Arion was part of the chaos that tore it all down. When you look at how things have unfolded, it's hard not to feel like this was one big cautionary tale. Martell wanted freedom, but what he got was loneliness. He wanted control, but what he found was confusion. He wanted validation, but what he lost was respect. Fame can be a double-edged sword. It gives you attention, but it also exposes every weakness. Martell is still trying to hold on to that spotlight because deep down, he doesn't want to be forgotten. He keeps posting, keeps giving interviews, keeps trying to prove that he's okay. But peace isn't found in attention. It's found in humility. Behind all the headlines and gossip, there are real people trying to co-parent, heal, and move on. Martell and Melody share beautiful children who deserve peace and stability. Arion also has a child with Martell, and that adds another layer of complexity that most fans can't fully understand. That's why it's important to talk about this story with empathy. It's easy to laugh at the memes and argue in the comments, but at the end of the day, there are families trying to move forward while living under public judgment now. When fans talk about Martell Holt, they don't just talk about a reality star. They talk about what happens when pride meets pressure. At one time, Martell was admired. He was the husband people pointed to as an example of success. But success doesn't test your charm, it tests your discipline. And that's where Martell failed. The choices he made behind closed doors eventually came to light, and those choices changed everything. Not just for him, but for Melody and their children, too. Everyone who watched Love and Marriage, Huntsville remembers the moment when the truth started to unfold. The smiles faded, the arguments grew, and the love story turned into heartbreak. You could feel the pain through the screen. And right in the middle of all that was Arion Curry, young, confident, and suddenly famous for all the wrong reasons. Whether she meant it or not, she became the face of scandal. She didn't sign up for that kind of fame, but it found her, and once it did, it never let go. Every move she made was criticized. Every word she said was turned into a headline. Some saw her as a villain. Others saw her as a victim. But either way, she became part of a story that millions couldn't stop talking about. And to be fair, anyone in her position would probably want to defend themselves. But every time she tried, it only made things worse. The internet doesn't care about context, it cares about chaos. And in that chaos, both Martell and Arion lost control of their own narrative. Meanwhile, Melody kept moving forward. She was the definition of grace under pressure. She didn't waste time trying to prove anything. She just did the work. She rebuilt her image, her career, and her confidence. Fans watched her grow into something even stronger than before. That's why people root for her, because she didn't let the betrayal break her. She used it to become better. Martell, on the other hand, is still learning that lesson. He's trying to act like he's fine, but deep down, he knows he lost something real. The calm, collected version of himself doesn't last long before the anger slips through. You can see that he's still wrestling with regret, still fighting that internal battle between pride and pain. Arionne's journey hasn't been easy either. She's dealt with humiliation, criticism, and emotional turmoil. And while she has had moments where she lashed out or said things she shouldn't have, she's also had moments of honesty where she admitted that this entire experience broke her in ways she didn't expect. She thought she was in love, but what she was really in was a trap, a relationship that promised happiness but delivered chaos. And here's the thing, Martell allowed it. He empowered her to feel confident enough to disrespect his wife, to speak on things she shouldn't have, and to act as if she was untouchable. But when everything fell apart, he didn't protect her. He didn't stand up for her publicly. He left her to face the backlash alone while he tried to rebuild his image. That's what makes this whole story so tragic. Let's not forget the rest of the Love and Marriage, Huntsville cast. Their reactions made things even more intense. Marceau Scott and Letitia Scott often found themselves pulled into the drama, especially when Martell started hinting that Marceau had secrets of his own. That caused major tension in the group. Letitia took her husband's side, but she also took shots at Melody, which only made things worse among the women. Kimmy Scott and Maurice Scott were dragged into it too. And Arionne? She didn't help. She hinted online that she knew private things about the cast, and that made everyone uncomfortable. Even though she wasn't an official cast member, her name stayed in conversations. She was like a ghost hovering over every storyline, never seen on camera, but always present. Fans started calling her the invisible cast member because even when she wasn't there, her shadow was. Every fight, every argument, every rumor had her name somewhere in it. And that's what made things so toxic. Arionne wanted the attention but not the responsibility. She wanted to be part of the show's fame without having to face the consequences that come with it. Martell's choices didn't just destroy his marriage, they damaged his friendships and his reputation. Even his business connections suffered. People started to distance themselves from him because they didn't want to be part of the chaos. And every time Arionne went live or posted something messy, it only made things worse. She wasn't protecting him, she was embarrassing him. But even after all that, he couldn't seem to let her go completely. That's the cycle that keeps repeating. Toxic love, mixed emotions, and broken pride. Arionne stayed because she wanted to prove something. She wanted to prove that she was better than Melody, that she could win. But the truth is, she was fighting a battle she could never win. Because Martell never truly saw her as his equal. He saw her as his escape, and that's the saddest part of it all. Arionne was chasing love, Martell was chasing ego, and both of them ended up losing peace. Meanwhile, Melody gained everything they lost: self-respect, success, and serenity. She's the one who turned the pain into power, while they're still stuck in the aftermath of their own decisions. By now, it's clear that this isn't just a story about cheating or drama. It's a story about choices. It's about how pride, ego, and lack of accountability can destroy everything good in your life. Martell Holt wanted freedom, but in chasing it, he lost his family, his image, and his peace. Arion Curry wanted love, but she ended up trapped in a cycle of humiliation and regret. Melody Shari wanted peace, and she found it by walking away, and that's the biggest lesson here: peace always wins. Growth wins. Accountability wins. Fame fades, beauty fades, but peace is what lasts. Martell's story is still being written, but until he truly faces himself and accepts responsibility for his actions, he'll keep repeating the same mistakes. Arionne may never get the redemption she wants, but she can choose silence and peace over chaos. And Melody? She's already shown the world what it looks like to rise above it all. So when people look back at this chapter of love and marriage, Huntsville, they'll remember three people: the man who lost it all, the woman who thought she won but didn't, and the woman who lost everything but gained herself. Martell Holt, Arion Curry, and Melody Shari, three names forever tied to a story that started with love and ended with lessons. Because in the end, the truth always finds its way out. And when it does, it reminds us that no matter how messy life gets, peace will always be the greatest prize.